Have you ever had that weird, unsettling feeling where you travel halfway across the world, step into a local cafe, and feel like you never actually left your hometown? You look around, you see the same white subway tiles on the walls, the same industrial chic metal stools, the same concrete flooring. You order an espresso, pull out your phone, look down at the app, and realize the app looks exactly like the cafe. Flat, clean black text on a white background with perfectly rounded corners. It's an uncanny valley feeling, and it's not just in your head. We are living through a quiet global phenomenon that designers and cultural critics call the Great Blending. Over the last decade, a strange corporate virus has swept through almost every industry on earth. It has eaten the color out of our fast food restaurants, stripped the quirks out of century-old luxury brands, turned our cars into identical-looking aerodynamic eggs, and flattened our digital spaces into a monoculture of absolute sameness. Think about it. We have more access to tools, colors, materials, and global inspiration than any human civilization in history. In theory, our world should look like a wild, chaotic explosion of diverse creativity. Instead, everything is slowly melting into the exact same corporate grey box. Look no further than what happened to the historic automotive brand Jaguar. In late 2024, Jaguar dropped a 30-second commercial to announce a total brand reinvention. It featured models in bright, futuristic outfits doing surreal poses. No cars appeared in the video, not a single one. Along with the ad, they deleted the legendary roaring leaping cat logo from their primary branding and replaced it with the minimalist wordmark that spells out Jaguar with a bizarre mix of capital and lowercase letters. The public reaction was a mix of total confusion and outright hostility. It became an overnight internet punching bag. Not that I like or agree with him, but it prompted even Elon Musk to ask point blank if they even sold cars anymore. But Jaguar wasn't an isolated incident. They were just late to a party that every major corporation has been attending for years. Why is this happening? Why is every executive suddenly terrified of personality? Today we're going to look behind the curtains of this corporate sameness. We're going to break down the physical evidence of this global flattening, look at the brutal economic machine that drives it, and discover why this obsession with being perfectly optimized is actually starting to destroy billion-dollar businesses. Let's start with the physical world around us, specifically what architectural educators call the chipotlification of fast food. If you grew up in the 80s, 90s, or even the early 2000s, fast food joints were architectural funhouses. McDonald's had massive soaring golden arches built right into the structure of the building. Pizza Hut had those iconic bright red gabled roofs that you could spot from a mile away on the highway. They were loud, weird, and unashamedly joyful. Now, walk into a fast food restaurant today and it looks like a corporate transit zone or a high-end dentist office. The primary colors are gone, replaced by monochrome surfaces, steel fixtures, and muted earth tones. The giant outdoor playgrounds have been quietly toned down. Why did they do this? Part of it was an image pivot in the mid-2000s to look more adult and to compete with upscale coffee chains. But a massive part of it comes down to real estate flipping and cost reduction. A generic grey box is incredibly cheap to build, cheap to clean, and crucially, easy to sell. If a franchise goes under, another business can move into a generic grey box without having to spend a fortune tearing down a roof shaped like a pizza hat. The design has been brutally optimized for throughput, real estate flexibility, and maintenance costs at the absolute expense of wonder and excitement. This flattening isn't just happening at the bottom of the market. It's happening at the absolute top as well. Look at the world of high fashion. For decades, luxury fashion houses used typography as a badge of heritage. Branding meant distinct historic serif typefaces with elegant little feet and tails on the letters that signaled old world craftsmanship. Then within a few short years, Balenciaga, Saint Laurent, Burberry, and a dozen other luxury houses all purged their historic logos. They replaced them with bold uppercase geometric sans serif fonts. If you line them up next to each other, they look like they were typed by the exact same graphic designer using the exact default font on a laptop. Author and cultural critic Kyle Chayka coined a brilliant term for this phenomenon in his book Filter World. He calls it airspace. Airspace is that strangely frictionless geography created by digital platforms. It is a realm of coffee shops, boutique hotels, and co-working spaces that share the exact same hallmarks everywhere you go. Reclaimed wood, industrial light fixtures, Edison bulbs, and minimalist furniture. Because we use apps like Instagram, Pinterest, and Airbnb to find places to go, business owners around the world are forced to design for the feed. If your cafe doesn't match the specific visual aesthetic that the algorithm rewards, it doesn't get shared, it doesn't get traction, and it doesn't get customers. Aesthetic sameness became a global service. It's a self-enclosed feedback loop. The algorithm promotes a certain look, business owners build that look to get clicks, consumers take photos of that look, and the algorithm learns to love it even more. So how did we get here? It's easy to blame lazy designers, but the truth is much deeper and more systematic. The culprit is what we can call the optimization machine. When a human being makes a design choice based on intuition, gut feeling, or cultural history, they create something distinct. It might be weird, it might even be polarizing, but it has character. But when a corporation makes a design choice based on big data, A/B testing, and algorithmic feedback, the math will always guide them to the exact same middle point. Let's break down the three hidden forces that make up this machine. Number one is processing fluency. The first force is a psychological concept concept called processing fluency. This is a fancy way of saying how easily our brains can read and understand a piece of visual information. Marketing psychology studies show that the faster a brain can process a logo or a piece of text, the more favorably the brain judges the content. When you are doom scrolling on a tiny 5-inch smartphone screen at 2 miles an hour, a complex, elegant logo with thin serifs and hand-drawn flourishes gets lost in the noise. It causes a tiny fraction of visual friction. A bold, flat, geometric sans serif logo, however, reads instantly at any size on any screen, from a giant billboard down to a tiny mobile app icon. Corporations didn't flatten their logos because they hated history. They did it because their data told them that flat shapes reduce cognitive friction on a smartphone screen. The second force is risk mitigation. Building a business is incredibly expensive, and corporate executives are fundamentally terrified of taking risks. In the old days, a creative director would pitch a wild, bold vision, and the executive would have to take a leap of faith. Today, executives don't take leaps of faith. They use data as a shield. Before a product, a car, or a storefront is ever built, it is run through focus groups, data models, and algorithmic predictive software. The problem with data models is that they're entirely backward-looking. They can only tell you what has already worked in the past. If the data shows that a gray minimalist aesthetic has a 12% higher baseline consumer acceptance rate than a bright, eccentric design, the corporate machine will choose the gray aesthetic every single time. It completely filters out the outliers. It guarantees you won't make a complete visual disaster, but it also guarantees you'll never make something truly magnificent or unique. The third force is the cold reality of global supply chains. If you are a coffee shop owner in Mumbai or Munich, it is vastly cheaper to buy mass-produced, flat-packed Scandinavian-style chairs and industrial light fixtures imported from a single global supplier than it is to hire a local carpenter to handcraft custom furniture from regional materials. Standardization is profitable. Customization is a massive financial liability. Sameness became the default economic path of least resistance. For a long time, this corporate strategy worked flawlessly. Companies stripped out the noise, optimized their pipelines, scaled globally, and watched their profit margins expand. But right now, we're hitting a massive structural wall. The optimization machine has run into a fundamental paradox. When you optimize for everything to be perfectly inoffensive, you end up making a brand entirely forgettable. And in a hyper-competitive global market, being forgettable is a death sentence. We are starting to see the massive financial fallout of this corporate collective mistake. Let's look back at the numbers for Jaguar. Global sales had already plummeted from over 180,000 units in 2018 down to just 67,000 in fiscal 2024. Desperate to escape a market where they were making close to zero profitability, executives decided to burn their entire heritage to the ground, stop production of their old models completely, and try to rebrand into an ultra-luxury electric space. The immediate result of their hyper-minimalist carless rebrand campaign? A historic public relations disaster, massive dealer network reductions from 122 down to just 20 boutique locations in the US, and European monthly sales during their production transition phase that collapsed into nearly double digits. They optimized so hard for a clean slate that they completely alienated the core audience that kept them alive. Or look at the British luxury house Burberry. Between 2021 and mid-2024, Burberry chased a corporate strategy aimed at pushing the brand away from its historic rugged British identity and straight into the world of hyper-trendy streetwear adjacent fashion-led luxury. They want to sit alongside the top tier of minimalist global luxury houses. The result? They lost their distinctiveness in a declining market. Aspirational consumers become price sensitive, and the brand's unique identity softened into background noise. For the 2024-2025 fiscal year, Burberry's revenue plunged by 17% to £2.46 billion, and their adjusted operating profit plummeted a staggering 94% down to just £26 million. They learned the hard way that when a heritage luxury brand tries to look exactly like every other modern streetwear label, consumers will simply stop paying a premium for it. This is the real cost of the great branding. When you strip out the texture, the history, the regional quirks, and the human weirdness from our world, you don't get sophistication, you get a trillion-dollar ghost town. You get an environment that feels alienating, cold, and profoundly boring. Human beings don't fall in love with efficiency. We don't form deep emotional attachments to processing fluency or optimized real estate resale values. We fall in love with the cracks, the eccentricities, and the creative risks that tell us another human being actually stood in a room and built something from their soul. But here's the good news. The pendulum is finally starting to swing back. Consumers are experiencing severe collective burnout from this era of sterile minimalism. We are starving for texture, color, and raw authenticity, and smart businesses are starting to realize that the only way to survive the next decade is to actively rebel against the optimization machine. Look at Burberry's massive strategic pivot over the last 18 months. After their catastrophic financial dip, they launched a dramatic corrective plan called Burberry Forward. They fired their previous strategy, returned to their roots, and brought back their classic, unmistakable British luxury expression. They put their focus straight back onto what made them famous in the first place: their iconic trench coats, their heritage check pattern, and authentic outdoor imagery. The data shows the market rewarded them immediately. While the rest of the luxury sector continued to struggle in 2025 and early 2026, Burberry's brand sentiment surged. Google search interest accelerated by 10% year on year, and their operating profits for the latest fiscal year rebounded sharply back up to 160 million pounds. They prove that authenticity isn't a backward-looking luxury, it is a vital financial lifeline. And this resistance is popping up everywhere. We are seeing a massive global surge in maximalist interior design, the revival of retro typography, and the explosive rise of hyper-local indie coffee shops that profoundly reject the clean, white, subway tile aesthetic in favor of chaotic, cozy, vintage charm. We are entering a brand new era. In a world where generative AI can instantly produce a million perfectly clean, mathematically optimized, totally flawless logos, websites, and building designs in 3 seconds flat, sameness is no longer an asset. It is a commodity. When perfection becomes cheap, imperfection becomes priceless. The future belongs to the brands, the architects, the creators, and the business owners who have the courage to break the molds, stop chasing the algorithm, and put the human weirdness back into the world. Because at the end of the day, the things that make us different are the only things that make us real. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel for more engaging content like this. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.